Okay, so Peking University, where the Yanjing Academy is happily a part of and located. Peking University is the oldest and most prestigious institution of higher education in China. It was founded in 1898 as Jingshi Daxuetang as part of the otherwise failed 100 Days Reform movement under the second to last emperor of the Qing dynasty, the Guangxu emperor. Although the name, the 100 Days of Reform, suggests that it was short and perhaps failed, one of the lasting legacies of the 100 Days of Reform was the beginnings of updating, so-called modernization of China's higher education system and the founding of what would become Peking University. Here you can see a sort of overview shot of a portion of our campus. We're located in northwestern Beijing. If you're familiar with Beijing, we have 6 ring road highways that encircle the city. Peking University is in the University District in the northwest, outside of the northwestern corner of the 4th Ring Road in Beijing. Here are a few of the lovely shots of our campus. It's a truly beautiful place to live, to work, and to study. In the bottom left, you can see probably the most scenic and most famous part of PKU's campus, Weiminghu, No Name Lake. Just give you a couple of more images that are slices, albeit especially attractive slices of life on PKU. I'd like to introduce the Jingyuan courtyard. Jingyuan is not only a lovely and historically significant portion of PKU's campus, it's also where the Yanjing Academy has our administration buildings, our teaching building, as well as our large multimedia lecture hall. Jingyuan is a sort of grassy area in the central west portion of PKU's campus, especially historically significant. And we also have essentially a program mascot. You can see Fengzhua, our YCA cat. There are lots of cats living on PKU's campus, and there's a group of dedicated students and faculty who actually are dedicated to caring for the cat, spaying and neutering the cats, feeding it, as well as updating everyone on their daily activities on social media. PKU itself is quite a large university. We have over 11,000 faculty members, organized into 51 different schools and departments, as well as 10 national laboratories. This group of faculty, along with the dedicated professional administrative staff at Peking University, serves over 47,000 full-time students, as well as around 4,500 international students. So what is Yanjing Academy? We are a master's program in China studies that is fully funded. We explore contemporary China through interdisciplinary teaching and research methods. We try to understand the changes that have taken place in China over the last 40 years or so, mainly of the reform and opening period, and how those changes within China have altered and adjusted China's place in the world. We are a 2-year academic master's program. So academic master's programs in China, as opposed to professional master's programs, indicates that you have to write a thesis and defend it in order to graduate. Now, I have had the great fortune of running the admissions program for over 3 years now, as well as teaching multiple classes of Yanjing Scholars. And I personally assure you that those who join our program are outstanding. They are fascinating. They are interested in China. They have done exciting and interesting things in their lives up until joining the program. They have really unique research projects here, and they go on to accomplish wonderful things after they leave. Now, we are part of an interesting experiment of bringing some of the best practices of interdisciplinary teaching and research methods to the already fully formed Chinese system of higher education, specifically at the graduate level. And we're also part of an interesting process of defining what China studies as a discipline means, how it's administered, how you teach it, how you evaluate it, how you integrate it into other humanities and social scientific disciplines within the Chinese system of higher education. I'll tell you a little bit more about that coming up. And then this last point here, a catalyst for international dialogue. I recognize that sounds like we're laying it on a little bit thick here with that talking point, but when you have brilliant young people from different countries, regions, cultures, religions, educational and professional backgrounds, all with a shared interest in better understanding China, living together, working together, studying together, whether you're in the classroom, in discussions or debates, whether you're in the cafeteria or walking on campus or in the dorm, you really do not only learn about China, but you learn about the rest of the world. And the kinds of conversations that take place are always enriching, can sometimes be challenging, but are very, very worthwhile. So we are a residential college program. So what that means is that all Yanjing scholars in their first year live together in the Yanjing Academy House, our dormitory, which is only maybe 100 or 200 meters away from our administration and teaching buildings. So as I said, all first year students live together in the dorm. We are a 2-year master's program, and you should consider us fully funded. But there is an academic performance review at the end of the first year. I'll tell you a little bit more about the very clearly defined standards that all Yanjing scholars must achieve in the classroom and in relation to their grades. Scholars from the Chinese mainland and the regions of Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan are required to live on campus in the dormitory for both years of the program. International scholars are required to live in the dorm on the first year. The second year, they can apply to stay in the dorm, or they can choose to live off campus and will receive a housing stipend. The language of administration and instruction at YCA is English. You do not have to have prior capability or even fluency in the Chinese language to join the program. But since we are a highly competitive China Studies graduate program based in China, you will be able to speak Chinese, not just in your Chinese language classes, but with your classmates, the broader Peking University community, and you will hear Chinese spoken as often as you probably hear English, or maybe even other language spoken as well. Let's talk funding. So the Yanjing Academy Fellowship in the first year includes full tuition payment, accommodation in the dormitory specifically for Yanjing scholars, a monthly stipend of living expenses which is about 3,000 renminbi, which is exactly 3,000 renminbi, or roughly, I don't know, maybe $600 a month. I haven't checked the exchange rates in the last couple of days. For the first year, we offer financial support for 1 round trip travel from your home city to and from Beijing. And you also have basic medical insurance. This medical insurance is designed for international students living and studying in China. If you are still on medical insurance in your home country, however, we recommend that you stay on that medical insurance. No reason to drop it. Now, about the academic review. You know, this investment we're making is quite large. At the individual level, maybe not as much, but when you recognize that we have roughly 120 students each class and 2 classes of students active at YCA every year, then you can see the size of the investment. We therefore think it is highly reasonable to require an academic performance review at the end of the first year, at the end of the year in which you complete all of your academic coursework. Our clearly defined standards include completing a certain minimum number of academic credits, maintaining a certain minimum GPA, not failing any of your core required courses, among a couple of others. If you meet those standards, you receive the second year fellowship. We also have plenty of other funding opportunities. I think one example in the first year would be the Dean's Research Grant. It is a grant for individual or group independent research projects offered on a competitive basis. You write a formal research proposal with your group or individually, submit it to us, and if we think it's interesting, doable in the first year, and has the potential of making a contribution to the field as a whole, we will fund your independent research. In the second year, we offer scholarships for continued intensive language study, We offer jobs such as a teaching assistantship, residential assistant, office assistant, as well as opportunity grants for students to say join an international academic conference and give one of their papers there. Research areas. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on this because this is a very, very important aspect of not only how YCA is defining and integrating China studies into the system, this highly centralized system of degree conferral under the Ministry of Education of the PRC, but it's also important to your experience at YCA in several ways. First, the application stage. When you apply to YCA, you will be required to choose one of these 6 research areas in which to conduct your master's thesis research. Since this is a law and society focused information session, I'll use that as the examples. So when you apply, what will we be looking at? Well, we'll be looking at your academic record, undergraduate and or previous graduate training. We'll be looking at the courses you've taken, the grades in those courses, any papers you might have written, any publications you might have, any research internships, with an eye to assess whether or not we think you have the requisite training in the field to which you're applying, either legal studies or perhaps sociology or somewhere in between, to be reasonably able to conduct graduate level research at Peking University with top faculty, with classmates who are literally the brightest graduate students in China, and have a good chance of success at defending your thesis and meeting the exacting academic standards of our university. So what does that mean? You know, if you are a sociology undergrad with a Chinese language minor and you're applying to law and society, well, that's obvious. That's a one-to-one, you know, previous academic training to your research area at YCA. But if you aren't, if maybe you studied history, but you're applying to law and society, well, that's okay too. You know, but what you need to anticipate is if there is an apparent distinction or a gap between your previous academic study and or work experience and the research area to which you're applying, anticipate that we'll have some questions, perhaps attempt to address those questions in your application materials. Now, I am not saying that you must only apply to the research area in which you already have or are about to complete a degree. What I am saying is you need to anticipate our questions and be strategic about it. We want you to study what you're interested in at the graduate level. We also have a responsibility to ensure that you are well enough prepared to be successful in that field. The second way that the research area will be important to you at YCA is in the selection of a thesis advisor at the end of your first academic year. The thesis advisor will guide you through the step-by-step process of designing, carrying out, drafting, submitting, and defending your master's thesis. And the thesis advisor will need to be drawn from one of the areas, one of the departments or schools broadly defined within the law and society research concentration. So perhaps you're interested in looking at maybe reforms in the Chinese legal system. Well, then your best bet is most likely someone from a professor from the School of Law. If you're interested in looking at family composition and the aging population in China now and going into the future, well, then it would make sense for you to choose someone from perhaps the Department of Sociology. So law and society is already very, very broadly defined, but you will need to find a professor who comes from one of the fields that can connect to law and society, not only to better advise you, but also for the thesis defense requirements set by the Ministry of Education and implemented by Peking University. And then finally, your research area will be important to your experience at YCA when you graduate. Part of the way that we have been able to integrate China studies as a discipline into the centralized system of degree conferral in China is what you see here. these research areas. So if you graduate from Law and Society's concentration of China Studies, your diploma will say Peking University, Master of Law, China Studies, Law and Society, or Peking University, Master of History, China Studies, History and Archaeology, Peking University, Master of Economics, China Studies, Economics and Management, etc. I'd like to briefly tell you about the courses that you will be required to take in your first year at YCA. And I'll once again emphasize that all coursework is done in the first year. The second year, the summer after your first year, and the second year is dedicated to giving you free time for internships, research trips, carrying out your thesis research, writing your thesis, defending your thesis. So in the upper left, you see our core required courses, China in Transition 1 and 2. This is a 2-semester course that is an interdisciplinary look at contemporary China. The first, and everyone takes it together. The first semester is group taught by a team of exceptional faculty members at Peking University, generally in modules that are a week or 2 weeks long. A module on China's economy, China's political system, Chinese society, et cetera, et cetera. This is organized in large lectures, sometimes, several times a semester, panel discussions or debates between faculty. And the large lecture or panel discussions are immediately followed by breakout discussion rooms that are smaller, that are led by teaching assistants, and that faculty members join at certain points during the discussion. China in Transition 2, the spring semester of China in Transition, are smaller courses. You choose to take the course with one of the professors who taught in the fall based on his or her research interest and the topic of the course. And then you dive deeper into that discipline's understanding of China. And in this course, you design and carry out a field research project in a group. The goal of this course is to give you on-the-ground field research experience before you start your master's thesis research in the second year. Field study is a course that we take all Yanjing scholars outside of the classroom and outside of Beijing to experience the geography, the environment, the history, the culture, the economy, the urban space of a different city and region around China. For the first several years, we took students to Xi'an, the capital of Shanxi province, and it's often called northwestern China, north central, northwestern China. Last few years, we've been taking students to Chengdu, the capital of Sichuan province, as well as Chongqing, an not independent, but a directly administered municipality just south of Sichuan province. Topics in China Studies lecture series is a year-long course where we bring in different leading figures. They might be academics, they might be business leaders, they might be artists, officials, diplomats, etc., all broadly defined within the field of China Studies. And they give, they're leaders in their fields, and they give a lecture and have discussion with Yanjing scholars. Today is Friday in Beijing. Yesterday morning, we just had an exciting Topics in China Studies lecture series. And that one was on the Book of Songs and the importance of poetry in Chinese culture. I think it was called From Shujing to the Internet, the importance of poetry in Chinese culture. Academic writing is a year-long co-taught seminar course where we bring in different faculty members from different areas, different disciplines at PKU to give you some of their advice on all steps in the master's thesis design, research, analysis, drafting, writing, defending stages of your second year research process. All international students at YCA are required to take Chinese language courses, unless you are an international student who, within the last 2 years, has passed the HSK level 6. HSK is the standardized test for non-native speakers' language proficiency in mainland China. If you have passed HSK 6 in the last 2 years, you can apply to place out of the Chinese as a second language courses, but you still have to take those same number of course credits, and we encourage you to do so in content courses taught in Chinese at other departments. A very exciting opportunity, a big challenge as well. Native Chinese speakers, so those from the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, are required to take another foreign language course, non-English foreign language course. So these next two slides are going to give you the course offerings, the elective course offerings at YCA in the 2022-2023 academic year. You can see Law and Society is in the far right column here. We have Contemporary Chinese Society, Legal Dynamics of Chinese Commerce and Society, Women in Contemporary China, Understanding Social Inequality, China and International Law, Chinese Population, and Chinese Frontier Societies, a Socio-Historical Approach. Although this slide and the following slide list these courses in columns connected to the research areas, I want to emphasize you are not limited to taking courses only within the research area you have chosen. Quite the opposite. You are encouraged to take courses outside of the research area. Essentially, you take any elective course you want at YCA. And this is strikingly different from both undergraduate and most graduate programs in China today. We are an interdisciplinary program. We want you to be interdisciplinary in the courses you choose. We do, however, hope that you, in discussions with your first year academic faculty advisor, will select courses that help prepare you for your master's thesis research. Should be something you're interested in. Perhaps it's an area that you don't know enough about and need to strengthen, solidify your knowledge base. Perhaps it's something that you are interested in maybe having the professor, because his or her research area, hopefully have them be your second year thesis advisor. Here are some courses in the broadly defined humanities. We have history and archaeology, philosophy and religion, literature and culture. So there are many ways that you can think about building an interdisciplinary elective course schedule that can enrich your potential thesis topic or your broader knowledge within law and society. If you're looking at historical sociology, you could perhaps take some history and archaeology courses. If you are thinking about historical law, you could take some history courses and look back at the Tang Dynasty Code, et cetera. So there's a lot that you can explore. And these are just for this year, they're for your reference. There will be some changes next year, should you be admitted, but I think it will be adjustments rather than foundational changes. Here are some of the thesis topics within Law and Society that Yanjing Scholars over the last years have completed. And I show this to give you a sense of just how flexible this research field of law and society can be. I mean, we see, a topic on African migrants living in Guangzhou and their attempts to become entrepreneurs. International law and cyberspace, connecting sovereignty and human rights, issues of adoption in China, gender-based employment discrimination, comparative sort of an educational language reform, comparative look at Xinjiang, Turkey, and Kazakhstan, and online courtrooms. So there's a lot you can do. One of the key ways that you will be able to navigate the academic community, the academic life at Peking University, and be able to design and complete an interesting and successful master's thesis is the Yanjing Academy's very unique in China advisor system. So every Yanjing scholar will potentially have, most of them have 2 different advisors in their 2 years. First year academic advisor is called a faculty advisor. Second year academic advisor is your thesis advisor. Here you can see that we have over 140 academic advisors from 24 different schools and departments at Peking University. So first year faculty advisor is there to guide you and introduce you to the academic community at Peking University. They are there to learn about your developing research interests, offer suggestions on courses you might want to take as you build towards your master's thesis, and introduce you to other faculty that might be experts in or could be helpful in guiding you towards the master's thesis. You will choose your faculty advisor about a month into your time in your first semester here It's a process of mutual selection. You look at the faculty bios, you rank the top 3 or 5 potential faculty advisors for you. They then look at your bio, your CV, your transcript, and if both of you choose, then you now have a faculty advisor. Now, it happens sometimes that your faculty advisor ends up becoming your thesis advisor, and that's wonderful if that works out. It's not required, however. We just don't think it's reasonable to mandate and require students to be able to identify who their thesis advisor will be a month into their experience at YCA. Here's some of the shots of our fall field study course, where we've been going to Chongqing, Sichuan, Chongqing municipality, and Chengdu, and the regions around Chengdu and Sichuan province. You know, this is a required course with assigned readings before departure, multiple lectures, required lectures before departure, and lectures, site visits, interviews happening on the ground. You know, we're in Sichuan, so of course we're going to go visit the pandas and we're going to eat some delicious Sichuan cuisine. But we're also, you know, going to look at, you know, China's oldest still active irrigation canal. We're going to look at a natural disaster early warning system that was put in place. We're going to look at unmanned aerial vehicle companies. We're not only going to go to one of the most interesting and confounding to archaeologists archaeological excavations, the Sanxingdui site just outside of Chengdu. You know, anyone can go there and go to the museum, but because we are Yanjing Scholars, because we're Peking University, we get to go into the actual archaeological excavation site and have the work be introduced by the team of PKU archaeologists who are working there. Absolutely fascinating and rare opportunity to get to experience that. The Springfield study is both part of China in Transition 2. You can see some of the basic stats of where CIT spring semester classes went for field study, but also for other elective courses. Pandemic policies allowing, I should have said pandemic policies permitting, but we encourage our elective course professors to integrate as much as possible or appropriate field study opportunities outside of the classroom and sometimes outside of Beijing, all funded by YCA. We've been improving with great success our career development offerings through the Student Affairs Office. We have recruiting sessions from companies or organizations. We have mentorship opportunities. We have discussion panels like this here, where you see a couple, maybe even several Yanjing scholars from different fields early in their career, sharing their experiences with current Yanjing scholars. These are all on a voluntary extracurricular basis. We just implemented over the last couple of years a professional advisor system where we have some leading figures in different industries and organizations, mainly in Beijing, that are available for you. Sign up as a advisee, and you can maybe meet with them one-on-one, learn about their careers, maybe do some professional shadowing occasionally, things like that. And in terms of success after graduation, Yanjing scholars generally have a really strong record of success in the next step in their career after they graduate from our program. Roughly 20%, maybe a quarter of Yanjing scholars go on to further graduate study, mainly at the doctoral level, but sometimes also law school. You can see some of the top universities where Yanjing scholars go. And then you can see some of the international organizations, private corporations, et cetera, where Yanjing scholars find gainful employment upon graduation. The flagship extracurricular event at Yanjing Academy every year is YGS, the Yanjing Global Symposium. This is a student-organized and student-run international China Studies conference that targets generally delegates and participants who are at the early stages of their career, young scholars, young professionals. Keynote speakers, breakout discussion sections, topical discussions and debates. All of these are designed by and carried out by Yanjing scholars with the support of YCA staff. This year's Yanjing Global Symposium explored issues of globalization, anti-globalization as the world attempts to recover from the COVID pandemic. The last two have been online and they have been incredibly successful. Travel restrictions permitting, we plan to return to in-person YGS as soon as it's feasible. Now, some stats about Yanjing Scholars. We are a highly diverse international group of young scholars. You can see the broadest regional breakdown. Obviously, we have more improvement that we need to make in bringing more scholars in from especially Africa and South America or Latin America, but we are continuously working on strategies to do so. Over the 8 cohorts of Yanjing Scholars, we have brought in scholars who are graduates of roughly 350 universities worldwide. What you're seeing here are the universities that have placed the highest number of graduates at YCA, some top universities in the world. I want to emphasize that you don't have to be a student or a graduate from one of these so-called top universities to be admitted into the program. But this is the record of the most students coming from certain universities. In general, most Yanjing scholars are applying in their final year of university or recently after graduating. The majority over the course of all of our cohorts are their highest degree attained are bachelor's degrees, but we do see a significant number of Yanjing scholars who also have previous MA degrees. Law and Society over the years has been a solid 3rd place in popularity for Yanjing scholars who choose this research area when they apply and then complete their graduation in this research area. Politics and International Relations and Economics and Management tend to be the most popular, and the Humanities broadly defined make up about a 5th. I want to emphasize that this is not planned. This is not our ideal breakdown. We do not have quotas for research areas. This simply reflects what the most talented applicants in those given years had chosen as their research area at YCA. In 2022, we have 111 scholars from 27 different countries and regions. You can see the regional and or national breakdown of Yanjing scholars. And this, the 8th cohort, so is the students who are now a month or so into their first academic year. Here you can see the universities that place the highest number of students at YCA. Again, this is not all the universities. These are just the universities that were placed 2 or more students in our 2022 8th cohort. Okay, let's talk for my final section of my presentation. Apologies for running a little bit over time. Admissions. So we are a highly competitive, fully funded China Studies graduate program at China's top university. So an outstanding academic record is required to be admitted into the program. You will be competing in the application process against some supremely talented people. So we do expect academic excellence in Yanjing scholars before, when they apply, and of course, when they're in the program. But that's not all we're looking for. If there are extracurricular activities that are important to you, that have defined your undergraduate or academic experience and or sort of essential to your personality, we want to know what those are. We value that. We want to know what you will bring to our community and potentially how you can contribute to our community outside of the classroom, not just academically. So are you, have you started your own company? Are you an artist or an athlete or a musician? Are you committed to community service, to improving the lives of those around you, et cetera, et cetera? These are things we want to know about. So please include them in your application materials. We value applicants who have a strong commitment to multiculturalism. We are a multicultural community. So if you have experience or you can, discuss why exploring diverse cultures is important to you, we'd like to hear that. We want to know why you are interested in studying China. We value students who have a record of studying China. It is not required, however. You don't have to be, East Asian languages and literatures major with a thesis on, Chinese novels and HSK 6 in Chinese and have a minor in Japanese to be able to get into this program. We love, we welcome those applicants with that kind of really East Asia or China focused academic profile. But we also want applicants who have excelled in other fields, whether they be economics, whether they be sociology, whether they be, perhaps STEM. And at this point in their academic or professional career have decided, oh, my career needs to be involved with China. And I want to use the Yanjing Academy as the beginnings of my intellectual engagement with China. So you would then take your expertise in a non-China related field, bring it into the classroom, apply it to your master's thesis, and at YCA, be able to build your own knowledge base and interactions with China. We want that kind of student too. I personally think if all of our students had the exact same academic and professional profile, it would be boring. Discussions are more interesting when you have people learning from professors, reading the same works, discussing the same topics, but have different levels of academic and or personal engagement with China studies and China or Chinese language, all in the same classroom. Different questions are asked, more interesting answers can therefore be found. And just like any graduate program application, you need to give us a good reason why you want to come. We want to see a sort of a story from your personal life, your undergraduate or previous academic training, maybe the work you've already done, to why you want to apply, to what you want to do here, and where you want to go in your career, and how you think we can help you achieve those career goals. Okay, we sort of have two distinct application processes. The first is for mainland Chinese students, PRC citizens. Unfortunately, the only way that PRC citizens, mainland Chinese students, can apply to the program, according to the rules of the university and the Ministry of Education, is through the exemption from the National Postgraduate Entrance Examination. What that means essentially is that you must have attended, or you must be attending, a bachelor's degree program at a Chinese university, and through your academic performance, your ranking, your GPA within your department or school, qualify for exemption from the National Postgraduate Entrance Examination. This is the Tuimian system. So unfortunately, mainland Chinese students can only apply that way. This means that if you are a PRC citizen who attended a university abroad, unfortunately at this time, you are unable to apply. Now, international students will apply through the Yanjing Academy web portal, application portal, and add the details that I'll tell you coming up in the next couple of slides. Applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan apply both to the Yanjing Academy application portal, but also must apply to Peking University's specific application portal for applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. So HMT, so-called applicants, must do both. You must complete PKU's application and YCA's application. Failure to complete either of those makes you ineligible for consideration and a potential interview. The minimum qualification for successfully applying to the Yanjing Academy is completing your bachelor's degree by August 31st of 2023, or August 31st of the year in which you intend to enroll. Application deadline is November 27th, 2022. This is about a week earlier than we normally have. This is because of the lunar calendar, our winter, Lunar New Year, so-called Chinese New Year, and our winter break are a little bit earlier this year. You will apply online at yanjingacademy.netapply.cn. We will need to see a certificate of English proficiency if you are a non-native speaker. If you are applicants from mainland China and from the regions of Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, must submit one of these standardized English language tests, IELTS, TOEFL, Cambridge, etc. International applicants for whom English is not their native language do not have to submit a certificate of English proficiency if your undergraduate or previous graduate programs were at universities that are taught in English. We will need to see certificates of enrollment. Perhaps you are currently a fourth-year bachelor's degree student and you don't have a diploma yet. We understand. We'll need to see an official certificate of enrollment from your university registrar. We need to see diplomas for any institution of higher education from which you have graduated. And that means hard copy. You will need to show us the hard copies of your diplomas when you arrive in China and enroll at PKU. We have 2 essays, a personal statement, maximum of 750 words in English. This is your standard application essay, who you are, what you've done, why you're interested in our program, how you can contribute, and where you want to go in your career and how we can help you achieve that. Then we have the statement of research interest, maximum 1,500 words, excluding citations. We used to call this the research proposal, but we changed this a couple of years ago to sort of broaden the scope a little bit. The statement of research interest is essentially your academic introduction to us, your research-based introduction to us. This can be a fully formed, research proposal, but only if you actually have a research project that you want to do at YCA and know it well enough to write a formal research proposal. I want to emphasize, do not submit a research proposal of a research project you have already completed or are currently doing. We want your proposal, your statement of what you hope to research when you are at Yanjing Academy. This is, even though it's a little bit broader than, say, a formal research proposal, this still is a formal academic document. You should include references to academic literature for the topics that you're telling us you want to explore. This is for advice for YCA application, but also for any graduate school application. Don't talk about your research plans and research interests in any graduate school applications without making at least references to academic literature on those topics. We want to see your resume or CV, and we need 2 letters of recommendation. Now, there are some important requirements for these. They both need to be academic letters of recommendation, professors with whom you have worked or who have taught you. And they must be either associate professors, full professors, or higher, or the equivalent title. We know not every national university system uses assistant, associate, full professor titles. We're aware of that. They need to be the equivalent titles. Unfortunately, associate professors do not qualify. This is the standard for all top graduate schools in the PRC, and it must be met. Now, if you have assistant professors or internship supervisors or other kinds of mentors who you want to have write a letter of support for you, you can submit those. We'd like to see them, but they have to come as additional documents, and they can't fulfill the 2 academic letters of recommendation requirement. Okay, that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate your attention and your patience. I welcome your questions. Last bit of advice, 2 bits. 1, go to our website, yanjingacademy.pku.edu.cn for English, yanjing.pku.edu.cn for Chinese, and study our program. Look at our faculty members, look at our leadership, look at the application process, look at the profiles of current Yanjing scholars to get a sense of the diversity of backgrounds, professional, academic, cultural, the diversity of interesting projects that they're studying while they're here, as well as the different paths that Yanjing scholars want to take. I intend this advice to be confidence building. We are not a one-size-fits-all program. We are multiple, we are diverse, we are interdisciplinary. Similarly, we are not looking for one single profile of applicant. Also, you can consider reaching out to individual Yanjing scholars or YCA alumni through social media like LinkedIn. We do not give out their contact information without express written consent, but in general, if you reach out to a Yanjing scholar on LinkedIn, perhaps maybe you graduate from the same university or from the same country. In general, they're pretty willing to talk to you, but that is up to them. And then you can see us on different social media, WeChat, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, Twitter, etc. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And now I'm going to welcome Vance Hao to the floor. She is now going to take over and give some of her own experiences and advice as an alumna of the Yanching Academy. I will now turn to the Q&A function and see and start responding to any questions that might be in there. Van, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Professor Haas, for such a full and informative session. It makes me very nostalgic about my time in YCA. So to give you guys some introduction about myself, let me first open my PPT. So I'm Van from Vietnam, and I'm the third cohort Yanching Scholar. I entered YCA in 2017, and I graduated 2 years later. So on the left-hand side is me on my graduation gown at Yanching, and the left-hand side is my whole class of 120 students on our graduation day. I study investment economics at college, and my background have nothing to do with China. And to be honest, in the beginning, I did not even think about China at all until I took an exchange study in Hong Kong. And all of my friends there was from mainland China, which encouraged me to learn Chinese. And when I started learn Chinese, I got to know about Yanching Academy. So I was very lucky that I knew Yanching right from its beginning, but I did not think about applying to Yanching in the beginning at all, because to me at that time, Yanching was out of my reach. All of the scholars came from like the top university, and they work at the best institute. So I did not have the confidence, but I have a very strong desire to come to China. So since I started learning Chinese, I have 3 years to prepare, and I did not know how, but I just literally did everything. On academic side, I got the annual merit scholarship and also American Chamber scholarship. I worked part-time. I interned at MNC and at the Vietnam's Ministry of Investment, and I also co-founded a startup. And as I told you before, I got an exchange study in Hong Kong, and later I got another in India. And I joined so many competitions, so many workshops, and I even took courses on Coursera and edX, as I felt like my background had little to do with China. So I took a lot of courses there on China. And on my CV, when I applied to Yanching, I listed down every courses. And I didn't know whether it worked to the admission panel, but at least it made me feel confident about my application. And on the language skill, before I came to China, I already got the HSK6, which is the highest Chinese proficiency test, and IELTS 7.5, which is okay. But I think the most important thing, as Professor Haas has share with you, is your story with China, which you need to show very clearly on your personal statement and on in your interviews. For example, my story, I share my story that I before I did not like China. I have so much misconception about Chinese people and culture, but it totally changed after I took a foreign study and gave me a life motivation to come to China and start my career. I think my story is very simple and very clear. Definitely your story don't need to be dramatic, but you need to be very true to yourself of why you want to come to China and to YCA, and how YCA can help you achieve your dream, and how you can contribute to the community. After the application process, congratulations that you got accepted in. As someone who enjoyed Yanching and China for 2 years, I would summarize Yanching as a place where you would be provided with full of resources and possibilities. There are 6 concentrations as you have studied on the website, and you can choose your courses freely across many areas. For example, on the left-hand side is the subjects within the law and society, as Professor Haas shared before, and on the right-hand side is the course that I actually took for the first year. So you can see that I actually took 4 courses in the law and society concentration. The 2 of them is China in transition. 1 and 2 is compulsory courses. So it means that I only took like 3 courses in laws and society, which is women in contemporary China, foreign investment law, and international development cooperation. And the rest of the course, it was from literature, it was from politics. So you can see that actually I can choose choose courses freely as I wish, and as my research area. So when I come to Yanching, I already knew that I want to do research on Chinese soft power. So it is more cultural politics side. And in the beginning, actually, my concentration I chose as cultural. And as Professor Haas said that you can always choose your concentration within 1 year, and you also can choose your academic advisor, which I did. And on my thesis, I chose the topic of quantitative analysis on the relation between Chinese economic soft power and the public perception. So it's also my first time that I did regression model, and my advisor was a teacher, was a professor that taught me a course in YCA, and that was a very fruitful and process that the professor helped me from forming the literature review, and he also helped me with the helped me with the the regression model. As I told you before, it's my first time, so I totally new to this, but this definitely a learning process to me. And I think that without the help from YCA teachers and professors across PKU in general, I would have difficulty, but very luckily. So on the social life, YCA, there's so many events, so many activities, and you as a YCA students, you can start your own clubs. I joined the calligraphy clubs at PKU, and I also in YCA we have the basketball club, we have the tennis club, we have the language club, and the teachers also like the academy also help organize a lot of events during the festival, like 端午节, or during the Christmas time. Here on the left hand side is our teachers and students join together to make it the rice cake, and on the left hand side is we did the secret Santa, and on Christmas Day. So it was very fun. And you also can join activities outside YCA on the PKU Y activities. Here, I also did the journalist for the student journalism club at PKU. And as Professor Haas shared before, that we have the field trip. So actually in YCA, you would have a lot of field trip. It's compulsory to join the field trip in fall and in the spring semester. And also during your courses, some courses would require you to travel to do your research as well. So this time I was in Guizhou, and it was for the research of the technology development in the area. One more thing is that Yenching and PKU in general have very beautiful campus. I can share with you a video. It didn't have the sound here, but I think you can imagine the majestic of the springtime in our within our classroom campus. It's really beautiful. And it's one plus thing that I really love about Yanching. Okay, so after YCA, many of my classmates went study further for PhD, and a lot of others, we work in corporate, just like me. Right now, after graduation, I got back to Vietnam and I work for China Telecom. So I work in IT and telecommunications, and I also got my own startup. So that is the end of my presentation. If you have any more questions, please let me know in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Van. Wonderful presentation. I noticed during YCA field trip photo, you and your classmates at what I think it was the START or SMART Observatory. We have, that photo there. We have frequently used that photo in my information sessions over the last couple of years. So, but I didn't know any of the students who were there on the trip. So I'm happy to know that you were there. You got an HSK before you came to HSK 6 before you came to YCA. So
yes.
What courses did you take to fulfill the course requirements? Did you take any classes in Chinese language? Content courses taught in Chinese? What classes did you take that were taught in Chinese, and what was your experience at that?
So I did the Confucius reading, 儒家经典选读, and
nice tones.
And it was it was very informative. I would say that this is one of the most interesting courses I ever taken in my studentship, and I think that the language could be one barrier to understand the essence, the beauty of the subject, but student needs to work harder for that subject because it's also difficult for Chinese student as well. But the reward is just profound because I feel like I understand how the Chinese mentality and how the Chinese societies, like modern Chinese society, shape right now. So it was really fun. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's a course that's offered by YCA ourselves. Did you take any courses taught in Chinese outside of YCA in other departments or schools at PKU?
Sadly, I did not, but okay. I did not register, but I did join several classes outside without registration. Yeah.
Okay. So you audited those courses. That's great. The reason why I asked that is we have a question in the Q&A, and Michael, I'd like to address that question before we move to your presentation. This question, a potential applicant asked, are there any offerings in 19th to 20th century Chinese law? So in 2022 to 2023, there aren't any courses offered by YCA that obviously in the title are going to cover 19th and 20th century Chinese law. But the reason why I asked Van about her experience is there are going to be other courses potentially in, say, the School of Law or even potentially likely in the School of International Studies, which includes both sort of politics and international relations, that might be more of a historical look at the development of the Chinese legal system. And the School of International Studies is especially one of the two schools or departments at PKU that has the highest number of English language courses that are open to Yanjing scholars as well. The other one would be the Guanghua School of Management. There will be other English taught courses at different departments and schools at the university, but Guanghua and the School of International Studies, in my experience, tend to have a higher number of English taught courses. Now, for this potential applicant who asked that, if you are at an HSK level 6, then I think you would be able to find more courses that would directly address the history of the development of the Chinese legal system, but they would be in Chinese. But that doesn't mean that, even if you can't find an English taught course that perfectly matches up with your interest in 19th or 20th century Chinese law, that doesn't mean you won't be able to explore that topic, even in your first year. I would recommend that through your first year faculty advisor and in your other classes, you would be able to find paper topics that fulfill the requirements of the course, but will allow you to develop your bibliography, to develop your knowledge, and to think deeply about the development of 19th century Chinese law while, fulfilling a course requirement. Now, I can't speak for every course, but for instance, one of the courses I'm teaching is History of the Field, Sinology and China Studies from a Global Perspective. And our term paper, which is 50% of the course, is an open term paper topic. It has to deal with the historiography of sinology and China studies as a field of academic inquiry. But within that, students can choose a sort of subfield, or they can choose a single topic and sort of trace the historiographical development, how people have studied, for instance, Chinese law, both in China and outside of China. That's one example that I think can illustrate how you can still find ways to explore that topic in preparation for what I imagine might be a thesis topic that you're interested in. Okay, that's my response to the question about 19th and 20th century Chinese law. If either of you have some responses, please feel free to add to it. Or if that potential applicant has follow-ups, please go ahead and follow up in the Q&A. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Michael Yip to take over and tell us about his experiences applying for at YCA and what he's doing now. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Professor Haas. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael, and I'm a 6th cohort Yanching scholar, having studied at the Academy between 2020 and 2022. Right now, I'm going to share 3 slides with you all, and over the next 5 to 7 minutes, I'm going to talk about 3 things. I'll first talk about my journey to YCA and the motivations that led me to apply. I'll then move on to talk about my experience, both in terms of the academics, but also outside projects, which might be things that you might be able to do during your time at Yanching Academy. And finally, I'll end with some suggestions. So on my journey to YCA, how did I get here? Well, in terms of the academics, I studied politics and international studies at Warwick University in the United Kingdom. I then studied law at postgraduate level. And at this point, I suppose I'd like to make 2 points, which is that, as Brent said earlier, it's absolutely okay not to have studied an explicitly focused China studies degree at undergraduate or postgraduate level. But the second point I want to make is that it's also okay to have studied a second master's degree, as it was in my case. In terms of the work experience that brought me to Yenching, I did an internship in my country's civil service in their Department for Environment. But I also took some time outside of my work to lead the London chapter of a community called the Young China Watchers, which which fosters the next generation of China-focused thought leaders. And after my internship, I returned to the civil service to work for around 2.5 years in the fields of international trade, infrastructure, and financial markets. And so I'm very much the type of candidate that Professor Haas described earlier, who worked in what was originally a non-China related field, but wanted to connect that field with developments in China. And before I go on to talk about my motivations, what I'd like to highlight at this point with my experience on the slide here is that this was my journey into Yanching Academy. Your journey will invariably be different. So if what you're putting into your application form doesn't correlate to what you're seeing here, that's absolutely fine. In fact, I think it's highlighting what makes you different from other applicants, and indeed different from the profile of Yanjing Scholars that have come before you and that you can see on the website, is, be that in terms of job, studies, or anything else, is an edge. So don't forget that, and please don't be daunted. Anyway, to move on and to talk about some of the motivations that led me to apply to Yanching Academy, well, what were they? I think first and foremost, a key motivation for me was being able to meet new people with a similar excitement and curiosity and interest in understanding what China is all about, be that domestically, globally, from a political angle, economic angle, and so on. I think another attraction for me was the ability to take advantage of new research opportunities. For a long time, I'd wanted to research and do an extended piece of writing on law and the Belt and Road Initiative. And so I saw YCA as a great opportunity to fulfill that. But YCA is also a great place to broaden your horizons and study something new that you've never studied before. And for me, I saw YCA as an opportunity to study a topic, say, for example, commercial law, from a perspective that I couldn't have studied in my home country. So it was necessary for me to join YCA and study commercial law, but from a Chinese perspective. I think the student projects like the Yenching Global Symposium that Professor Haas mentioned earlier are another really exciting part of Yenching life. I think it's a great way to meet, work with, and develop meaningful relationships with, as Professor Haas mentioned earlier, really inspiring and exciting scholars who go on to do really cool things after their time at Yanching Academy. And two other reasons might be travel and to improve one's Mandarin. Now, some of those interests may apply to you, some may not, but whatever it is, be sure to express them on your application form. What did I get up to during my time at Yanching Academy? Well, in terms of the courses I studied, that's a selection of the elective courses that I managed to join. You can see that in the first half of the list, there's a focus on law, but towards the latter half of the list, you can see that the choices start getting quite diverse. They cover the financial system, global development, corporations, and international trade. And the point I want to make here is that I really appreciate the chance to have studied under professors who taught from different schools. So of course you can see the representation from the School of Law, but equally I had a chance to study under a professor from the College of Environmental Sciences and Engineering, and under a professor who taught at Stanford Business School. And why is that important? Why is that a good selling point? I think it's because, that's how you can get exposed to new methodological, doctrinal, pedagogical perspectives that you couldn't get if you just stayed in one school during your time at Yanching Academy. I managed to co-chair the Yenching Global Symposium during my time at the Academy, and I really want to underscore how that is a really great vehicle for meeting awesome people that you can build some really great relationships with during your time at the Academy. I was also a teaching assistant for two courses, one on China and international law and another on China in transition. And I think I want to highlight this because there'll be some professors that you find yourself being drawn to and courses that you find yourself really enjoying. And I think what I really appreciate is that in the second year, you get a chance to play a role in delivering that education to the incoming cohort of Yanjing scholars. And so, again, it's a great way to have a really diverse and meaningful time at the Academy. And finally, in terms of the thesis that I ultimately wrote, it was on what I call the extraterritorial observance of Chinese and English commercial law on the Belt and Road Initiative, where I looked at, for example, the loan agreements that financed Belt and Road projects across the road, and trying to understand which laws underpinned those contracts. I also had time to take on some outside projects as well, and to give you a sense of just the diversity of things you can get up to. I took up some work at the World Bank. I represented my country at the Youth G7 Summit, and I took on a research role at Oxford as well. And in summary, what I want to tell you is that you can have a really busy, diverse, exciting, refreshing schedule at Yanching Academy. It's all there for you to take on board. Okay, this is my last slide, and here about when applying and when you're trying to make your application as competitive as possible. The first is a potentially obvious one. It's to articulate your research interest, but also its impact as well. And specifically, the questions that I'd encourage you to think about would be, what is the academic topic and debate that you want to contribute to? If you're interested, as I was, in legal reform, be as specific as you can about that. Is it reform in terms of China's family law, commercial law, constitutional law? And how are you going to contribute? Are you going to be using elite interviews, or are you going to take a doctrinal approach and analyze what's written in the legislative provisions? Or are you going to look at, take perhaps a discourse analysis approach and look at what people's responses are to the legal developments that you're analyzing? So being as specific as you can, I think, is going to be really useful here. A second question, I think, that would be beneficial for you to address in your application is, why does it matter to you? And why should it matter to others? At the end of the day, our research interests are personal decisions, and I think it adds color to your application if you explain why it is you're interested in law, or why you're interested in society from a Chinese perspective. The second thing is, as Professor Haas mentioned earlier, is to show you understand what the program is and what the program isn't. And specifically, what I'd call upon you to do here is to answer the question of what the knowledge or personal development gaps that you have, that you want to plug, and what elements of the program or the curriculum that you can identify that enable you to do this. So, for example, if you want to, if you wanted to study law from a Chinese perspective, but you hadn't had that chance to do that yet, tell us about that, and even better, name some of the courses that particularly catch your interest, even as an outsider, even as someone that hasn't begun, that hasn't begun their time at Yanching Academy yet. The third thing is to think about how you might contribute to the life and community at Yanching Academy. Yanching is more than a degree to be studied, and I think if you can explain how you can enrich the experiences of others, be that through, for example, giving your time, as I did, to the Yenching Global Symposium, or through other ways, that's really, that I think elevates an application. And to give you some more examples that flesh out this idea a little bit more, I have classmates that languages, and they put on language tables for my cohort. Other classmates had particular interests in China Latin America relations, China US relations, and set up specific clubs to address and to explore those interests further. So that's really what I'm trying to get at when I talk about being a contributor. And the fourth and final suggestion is for you to envision what life might look like after Yanching. What are your ambitions when you finish the program? And how does the Yanching experience enable you to fulfill them? Again, adds a little bit more color to your application, and I think elevates an application too. So that was everything that I wanted to say. Professor Haas, I'll give the floor back to you.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. I hope this has been informative and helpful. Van and Michael. Van, a pleasure to meet you for the first time digitally. Michael, always a pleasure to see you again. Thank you both so much for contributing your time to today's info session. To all of you in attendance or watching online, good luck, and we look forward to seeing your applications soon. Take care.